Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel, Saying Yes to Life. I'm Delisa, and today I'm sharing something a little different with you. Yesterday, I did a live presentation at our local library here in Vilcabamba, Ecuador, called I Believe in Butterflies. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy it. I believe in butterflies, and we're all probably pretty aware that things are not looking good in our world right now. And it's no matter what direction you look, it seems like everything is in collapse. You know, the financial system, the political system, the educational system, the medical system, you name it, it's a big problem. And it's such a big problem that you can say, I don't know whether it can even be fixed. And I think many of us have felt that way. And I had a conversation with a neighbor maybe a month ago, and he was just in despair and just saying the same thing that I just said, which is, I don't even think it can be fixed. And so then I told him, well, I believe in butterflies. And he said, well, I believe in butterflies too, and hummingbirds. And I said, well, yes, they're both very beautiful. And I can appreciate that. He was, I think, really responding to, even in all the problems, there's beauty in the world. There's more to it than that. It's not just the beauty of the butterflies and the hummingbirds. So when I say I believe in butterflies, I think about how do you make a butterfly? If it were your job to make a butterfly, would you start with a caterpillar? Probably not. And if you saw a caterpillar, would you have any idea that at some point the essence of that caterpillar is going to take the form of a butterfly? It's just not a linear process. It's an unpredictable event. And how does that happen? What it shows me is that there is a higher intelligence that you don't have to call it God or Allah or any of those names. It's a higher intelligence that is making all these things happen in nature that are often not linear. They're often very unpredictable. And yet that intelligence is within every aspect of life. And it goes beyond our ability to know how to do it. We can analyze it. We can put words on the different stages of it. And then we convince ourselves, oh yeah, we know all about it. We know that the butterfly does, or the caterpillar does this, and then it makes a chrysalis, and then it turns into a butterfly. But how do you get from here to there? And this intelligence that I'm speaking of, even for the most hardcore atheists in the world, how do you explain it without some higher intelligence? And so that's what I like to keep it at, because otherwise we can use all of our various faith systems to create more division. Well, what's the point of that? That's one of the systems is falling apart. And so let's go beyond that and look at where things are surprising to us. So let's look at this analogy of the caterpillar. The caterpillar is often not my friend. They're in my garden and they're gobbling up the food that I want to. I planted those seeds because I wanted those plants. And pretty soon, there's nothing left of those because the caterpillars got them. The caterpillar is doing what caterpillars do. And so they don't have to have any awareness that sometime what all the food that they're eating is going to go into the energy that's going to become a butterfly. They don't need to know that. They just need to do what caterpillars do. And at some point, there's a hormonal shift in their bodies, which has them stop eating and start building this chrysalis around it. And then the caterpillar disintegrates. And what we have is the caterpillar died. Uh-oh. It looks like this system's not working, okay? So the collapse of the caterpillar is turning into something unseen. We can't see inside the chrysalis. We don't see the changes that are taking place, that the energy that was present in the food the caterpillar was eating is being transformed into creating something that, how does it even know what it is? It's making wings, it's making antenna. And at some point, it's ready to emerge, and we see this butterfly. That's amazing. How can that happen? How can you get there from here? Well, when we look at the world and we say, it's so rotten to the core, and I say, well, I think there's a shift coming. And they say, well, I don't see it. I say, do you see what's happening inside the chrysalis? Do you see the shapes that are taking place? No, not until they're ready to come out. And so there are shifts taking place, but they're nonlinear. You don't just get to have a little better of this or that. It's a complete transformation, but we don't know how to do it. And that's where I think we can be discouraged, because we forget that we can focus on that intelligence as opposed to focusing on the dead caterpillars. Now, you don't see people marching to save the caterpillars. I mean, we just never see that. But what we end up with is when the caterpillar does what the caterpillar does, and the innate intelligence inside the caterpillar has everything it needs to make a chrysalis, and then the chrysalis does what the chrysalis does, and then emerge the caterpillar, because it was the next stage to do. Now, I'm not saying that this is a perfect analogy of what's happening in our world, but there certainly are some things that we can get from it to give ourselves a very different view of what's happening in the world. When we see the old systems collapsing, we could be curious. We could be hopeful. We could be astounded. We could look and wonder, like something else is going to be born, and I don't know what it's going to look like. None of us can know what it's going to look like. And is that okay? Can we live with that? Well, the fact that I believe in butterflies helps me live with that. Now, I have some friends that think I must just be a ding-a-ling because they're walking around constantly moping about how terrible the world is. And they figure, well, you just don't know what's going on. If you knew, you'd feel like I do. And I say, well, maybe, but I think I know enough about that. I don't have to follow every detail of every terrible story. That doesn't do us any good. But just knowing that we have dead caterpillars lying around, and we have more that are dying, and they're dying really fast now, which is kind of exciting, because we know that the shift is happening. I do pay attention to astrological things that are going on, and we're at a tremendously amazing, once in a, not even once in a generation, once in a, I don't know, a species kind of event right here. And do we know what's yet to come? I don't. But I don't need to, because I believe in butterflies. And so what is it going to look like? I don't know. But what I do know is that as I see the systems around me collapsing, I can feel compassion for those people that are the victims of these things that are going on. But it's not going to make the world a better place, a happier place, a more loving place for me to be so depressed that I can't get out of bed and I don't ever have a smile on my face. And so thinking about butterflies makes me also think about all the other things in life that prove that this is the way life works. It's not just butterflies. So I'm going to just share a few other ideas that are astounding to me, and then you can share some of your favorites. One of them is about hummingbirds. I remember when I first was learning about hummingbirds, we didn't have them in Alaska where I live. And so when I first discovered hummingbirds, I was just amazed. And of course, they move so fast. And so I started reading, and it's like their metabolism is so fast that they would starve to death when they can't eat at night. They only eat during the day, except they kind of go into a state of hibernation at night. All their systems completely just slow way down so that they don't have to burn up all their energy or else they'd starve. So now that's a pretty creative solution. I wouldn't have necessarily thought of that. I would just get up and eat if it were me, but but they can't do that. And so before the sun is completely gone at night, they go into a feeding frenzy, which makes it fun for us because we can watch them all feeding. And then first thing in the morning, they do another feeding frenzy. But at night, they're in this torpor. They look like they're dead, but they're not. They're just hibernating so that they can conserve their energy. So that's one of the ways that this higher intelligence deals with a problem. If you're going to have a hummingbird that goes so fast that it can't survive the night, okay, that's a good solution. Here's one from Alaska. We lived right next to a lake. And the first thing that we would hear in the springtime, as soon as the lake begins to thaw around the edges, is the frogs croaking. And there's still ice all over the rest of the lake, but just around the edges, there'd be frogs croaking. And so Charlie knew about the story of the wood frogs. It's so fascinating. Just cute little things. They live for multiple years, but in the summer, they go into the lake. And then in the fall, when it starts to get cold, they come hopping out of the lake, go into the woods, and bury themselves under the fall leaves that have already fallen. And then they freeze solid all winter long. They're frozen solid. And then when it starts to thaw out in the spring, they come back to life and they hop back down to the lake. And I've seen them. I'm out cleaning up my yard, all the debris on the yard after a winter, and the leaves are moving. What? And it's the frogs coming from the woods down to the lake. That's an interesting solution to a problem. I wouldn't be able to help them that way. This higher intelligence that knows how to get from here to there is at work. And then one that is so commonplace to us that we don't even think about it is a seed, like a seed of anything, a flower, a plant, a garden vegetable. And any of you who've had gardens, if you buy seeds, they're just little things sitting there. And then all the information that we need for them to become whatever kind of plant it is in the seed. But that's not the only intelligence it has. It knows not to start growing in the seed packet. It waits until the conditions and the timing are right. And so it waits until usually some moisture and some heat. Sometimes they like cold. Anyway, the seed, that's just something that we all have in our lives. We know all about it. And how often are we amazed? How often do we look at that seed and you think, you are a miracle. I could never do that. I could never make a seed. And yet I use seeds all the time. So we have these things in our lives that if we wanted to pay attention and if we remembered to pay attention, we could just be awestruck all the time and realize what a miracle our lives are, so that when we think about, well, what are we going to do about the government? Well, it's like, well, I don't know, but I do believe in butterflies and seeds and wood frogs and hummingbirds. And then I'm going to tell you more of a personal story, which is, where do babies come from? Well, yeah, well, we think we know. Do we really know? Do we really know where babies come from? Well, when I was a little girl, I don't know how old, but prior to going into school, probably 4 years old or something, um, my father wanted all of his kids to, know certain things. And so he told us about, daddy's put a seed in the mommy and then the mommy grows a baby. And so then, of course, I knew all about it, right? And I'd seen dogs mating. And if you've seen dogs mating, they get stuck together for like a half an hour. I always wondered if that happened to people. And 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 then after that happened, puppies would come. So I understood that. And we had some cows, and we'd have a vet come and artificially inseminate them, and then a calf would come. So I, of course, thought that it was, cause and effect, the daddy and the mommy, and then the baby. And so I figured, first of all, it did not sound like a good thing to do. It's like, who would do that? And then I thought to myself, they must have really wanted kids a lot to do that. And so, I completely didn't know that there was any of this passion stuff that goes on. I just knew that, somehow or other, this thing from the daddy and the mommy, they get together. But how do they get together? How do you get those things to get together? Well, you have to create something really unique, because they're not just going to find each other, just kind of swimming downstream. So you have to have passion. Who invented passion? This higher intelligence that tells people to do this really strange thing and to like it, or else they wouldn't do it. This is even more kind of totally amazing. I was in the 6th grade when we were driving by somebody's house that had yet another kid. And this was like the poorest family in town, and they had kid after kid after kid. And so we were having a conversation in the car driving by, and I said, why do they keep having more kids? It was obvious that these kids were not, you know, they were just poor kids. So my mother said, well, they probably didn't know how not to. And I go, that makes no sense to me. Because I just thought if you had 5 kids, you had to do it 5 times. It's like, well, how could you not? So anyway, I had not yet figured out people weren't just doing it to make a baby. But to figure out a system to get people to do that is pretty creative. And yet we take it all for granted. Well, it's amazing to me. It's one of so many amazing things, which to me keep me smiling every day, even when the world is falling apart. Because the world that I see falling apart is only that part of it. We only see the part, we're looking at the dying caterpillars. And when we focus on that, we can get ourselves so depressed and so hopeless that we're no longer even taking care of ourselves the way we need to. I have some friends that have been close friends of mine for a while, and after the last presidential election, they were so depressed that the husband of that couple didn't get out of bed for 3 days. And she was so depressed that she was just eating all kinds of garbage and gaining weight and not going to the gym. And so they don't live around here. And so, she does not understand about butterflies yet, but I'm working on her. So when our distress prevents us from being the best version of ourselves, we're working against ourselves. If we want the world to become what it could become, which we don't really know, we need to be the best version of ourselves, which means we need to take care of ourselves physically and emotionally and spiritually and collectively. And as we do that, we can feel joy today while the systems are breaking down. One of my favorite authors is Charles Eisenstein, and he's written a lot of books. And one of them is called The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. And that's a theme for me. The more beautiful worlds our hearts know is possible. That's the same kind of energy as I believe in butterflies. And I think one of the most important parts for me is recognizing that it's not predictable. If it's a linear process, we can say, okay, it takes this long to get from here to here. So then it'll take this long to get from here to here. And then we can predict it. Well, we can't predict this. There's no way that if we were going to predict it, it would have to be, okay, everybody dies, and then that's the end of the world. And so there are a lot of people that are making that assumption. But that's not looking at the way life works. That's not the way life works. When there's a dead plant or a dead animal in nature, what happens to it? It gets recycled back into the next form of life. So all of these things are so unpredictable, and yet we can have complete faith that that is the way life works, and that we don't need to believe in any particular version of God, because the higher intelligence is always there and always present, and we have to really keep our eyes closed to miss it. So I'd like to open this up at this point to hearing from some of the rest of you. What are some of the things that when you look out into the world, you see that or amazing, awe-inspiring thing, or maybe something that maybe you haven't noticed before, but you're realizing, oh, maybe that's something I should pay attention to?
Well, something that came to my attention several years ago is the One Small Town initiative, which is about transforming our
Michael Tellinger.
Michael Tellinger,
Yeah.
and transforming, getting back to energy rather than money, getting back to celebration every day with only a small, maybe 4 hours a week, contributed to the greater, to the community, and being able to support with it.
Right. I do too. I love Michael Tellinger and all of his whole, yeah, wonderful.
Delisa, for me recently, it was that vegetable I found at the market.
Yes. Oh, now I can't remember again. It's a fancy kind of broccoli. It's
The spiral.
yeah. I can't think of who remembers the name of that.
Anyway,
Yeah. And you know what I love about you bringing that up is that if you just see an ordinary broccoli, you probably don't think that way. But if we could feel that way just with the ordinary broccoli that we always see,
yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. Oh, that reminds me of something else that's so amazing. How many of you have eaten breakfast today? Something, any kind of breakfast. Okay. So whatever it was you ate is now human. It's human. It became human. That's kind of amazing. You look at a plate full of food, and there it is. Oh, it's broccoli. That's rice. That's potatoes. That's whatever. In my case, it's not meat. But we put it in our mouth, and now, like, where is that potato? Well, there's no potato. It became human. It may not have made a human cell yet, but it's in the process of making a human cell. That's amazing. But we're not amazed. We do it all the time. Oh, going back to the amazing part about where do babies come from? you look at women, I'm a female, there's a few other females in here. This does not look like a place to grow a baby. But all these changes happen inside that are unbelievable to let this great thing grow in there and then get out. That's really amazing. I agree. I know, but then they have to carry him around the other way, so you gotta still carry. But then, what are you gonna feed this baby? Oh, no problem. We just make food. Like, is that not amazing?
Not only that, when the baby sucks, it puts saliva in. The mom reads it and makes the exact recipe the baby needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Totally amazing.
so if you pump the milk and give the baby the milk, it's not.
You're missing that.
If they give the transfer of information.
That's
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
that's great. Yeah.
And also the demand, also like the more, like for example, if there's twins,
Uh-huh.
twins usually have a side.
Ah.
Each twin needs different things, and they need
Ah.
different amounts.
Uh-huh.
So they have their side.
That's where they start the argument. Oh, you got more.
The other people here have read the ringing cedars, but they recommend
Yes.
putting seeds
In your mouth.
planting. So
Mhm.
forms seed.
Right. The Ringing Cedar series. How many of you have read those books? They start with Anastasia is the first one. I know. Totally amazing. Are they here at the library? Okay. Amazing. Amazing. Yeah.
For me, birds are, whenever I see birds, I think, wow, they're so free and they just can go wherever they want and they're taken care of and they live off the land. And just for me, that's amazing
Yeah.
to think about the birds.
Yeah. Absolutely.
To follow up on birds, when I was a boy, I always built birdhouses for bluebirds. And the bluebirds never came. They were at my friend's house. Annoying. Right? But I got tree swallows, which were always coming. I lived in New England, and tree swallows were there all the time. Here, where I live, there's almost, it's a tree swallow. It's not kind of this tree swallows I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see very many of them. There's two kinds of swallows that fly around, and not very many. They haven't come back yet. It doesn't seem like they've all come back. And I was feeling really sad because I was remembering those times when swallows would come into my birdhouse and I knew everything was in its place, everything was working out fine. And I said, I want them to come back. And so if they come back, I want to have a place for them to live when they come back. So instead of being sad that they hadn't come around, I decided to build a bluebird house. I know how to build a bluebird house. And I built a bluebird house so that if by chance they did come back, they would
have a home.
and the thing was, they're just by whether they come back or not was not the important point. It was that in that place where I was feeling sad, I changed it by doing something, making something to have a place ready for them if they did come back. Because I had done this once in Chile when I lived in Chile, and no one built birdhouses. Like birds, no, you don't do that. That was crazy gringo. Anyway.
Yeah.
I decided to do that here, and no, I've never seen a birdhouse here in Ecuador, but I'm hoping they will say, "Oh, someone built a birdhouse."
Thank you. You know, and I think that whether the birds come to it or not, you were putting out a loving act, a creative act, instead of, moping around about the birds just never come to me. Why don't they come here? They go to my friend's house. And I think for us to focus on being the best version of our personal selves, because we're all a little different, is the best thing that we can do in terms of how are we going to help to create a better world. If we create the best version of ourselves, and they do, and they do, and they do, that's what the world is made out of, is all of us individually. And so I think that so often there is that belief that it doesn't matter what I do, the world is already a lost cause, so screw them. And we don't need to do that. It's understandable that people are depressed and anxious and just afraid, but that's not helpful. It doesn't help us, and it doesn't help the people around us, because the world, well, our community here is made up of each one of us, and each one of us who can find a place of joy, even while we're sad about the dead caterpillars. We can be sad about them and still have an underlying sense of joy, and not knowing and not being afraid that not knowing is a problem. I'm actually glad I don't know, because I know that what's possible is far greater than I can imagine. So, yes.
Forget the
That the
vibrations travel.
yeah. Oh, the butterfly effect. Okay. Right. Yeah. And all of us have a frequency, and our frequency emanates from us based on our emotions. And our emotions are very tied to our thinking. So if we're going to think about how awful everything is, it's going to be kind of difficult to have any happy feelings. I do want to change a little between happy and joyful. And to me, joy is not just a big dose of happiness. Joy is a different kind of quality. And happiness can be sort of a giddy thing, excitement, like, yeah, that's it, I'm going to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that sometimes, but there's not a groundedness often in the happiness. I'm not putting down happiness. What I am saying is that we cannot be happy and we can be joyful at the same time, because the joy is, to me, has a greater grounding to it. It's an underlying belief in butterflies, if you want to put it that way. So even in the midst of sadness, we've probably felt that. Like if we lost someone that we love, we can feel sadness and we can feel joy that they're now out of pain, for instance. Or we can feel grateful that we had that experience of loving that person and that parent or that dog or whoever it was. And so we can feel happiness about a deeper joy that those are part of my life. And at the same time, sad and grieving because they're no longer with us. And so as the world around us, the external systems are collapsing, there are going to be people that we grieve for, systems that we were personally invested in that we may grieve for, beliefs in a certain person that then we don't believe in anymore, the corruption that just makes you wonder, how could humans be so horrible? And at the same time, while humans and the whole systems can be so negatively focused, we personally don't have to go there. And when we personally don't, we make it easier for others also, because we just we share our energy. And, how does that saying go? The rising tide lifts all of the boats. So for the people who are feeling hopeless, we're actually doing the world a favor and those people a favor by supporting our joy and keeping our frequency high enough that maybe on the days that we're not able to keep the joy inside and we're feeling hopeless, but there's others around us who are still holding that space. And so I can say I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I am not afraid of it at all because I just see what is possible and is the norm in life. That's the way life works, to do these amazing jumps of how do you get here from there? I don't need to know. So, what I do need to know is how to take care of myself and to relate to you and you and you and the butterflies and the birds and all of that. So, who else has some? Yes.
I just think that the body itself is amazing in the way that it can heal.
Yes.
And having this positive thinking and energy is a big, big part of that.
Totally. Totally. And when I don't know, a few months ago, when I did a couple of talks about the placebo effect, and that is so important to realize that the way we think and believe and feel is affecting us physically very much. So I'll tell you a short story about that with me. As you know, well, not all of you know, many of you know that I had braces on. That was not a joy in my life at all. My braces are off now. That is a joy. And I'm glad that I had them because it corrected the bite problems that I had. But when I got them put on, the dentist said it's going to take, like a year and a half, maybe a couple of years. I'm going, no way. It is not going to take that long. So I got them put on last July, and I got them off a couple of weeks ago. So like 7 months, 8 months, something like that. And so, because I talked to my teeth and my jaws, and I told them it's perfectly okay. You're allowed to, just think of it as gelatin. You can just move smoothly and easily. It's not going to be a big deal to move. And so they would just move. And so that's just an example of how I used my belief, my commitment. I am not wearing these that long. But yes, the healing process is amazing.
Yeah. You had to convince your dentist
Yes,
that you could do it. And she started to see that it was happening. Then she started to kind of come around. And
That's true, because she wanted to see me once a month. And I said, my teeth are going to move fast. You don't need it. And I said, can we do it sooner? And I wanted to do it every 2 weeks, but she said, no, 3 weeks, that's the minimum because you have to let your bones solidify around the change. And so we started meeting every 3 weeks instead of every month. And so, yeah, I know. Yeah, that's true. I did have to convince her, but she saw it after about 3 months, maybe. I asked her, well, how do you feel about the progress? And she said, she only speaks Spanish. Muy bien. And then she said, in adultos, it usually takes longer, but not in your case. and so that really, we shouldn't underestimate the power of our beliefs, because we could say, well, I can understand how maybe the wound would heal better, but not teeth or not cancer or not this or not that. Well, why limit it? Why limit it? And so that healing thing is totally amazing, because there's nothing else. Like if I tear this book, I won't do it. Don't worry. It's going to stay torn. I could tape it, but it's not going to heal. But if I cut myself, it's going to heal. And so I say, okay, well, it's a really bad cut, so I need to go get it stitched up. Okay, so I go to the doctor, and so I get it stitched up. Do the stitches heal me? No, stitches don't heal me. If anything, they make more wounds. All it does is it holds the wound together so that when it heals, it's healed closed. That's all. So when we go to get medical treatment, The doctors never heal us. I used to be a nurse. It's okay. But the doctors don't heal us, but they can definitely support us in certain ways. And like to set a bone so that when it heals in the position we want it to heal in, or that the wound grows back the way we want it to instead of maybe crooked or wide or something. But the healing only takes place within ourselves. And, I have seen people that didn't heal for whatever their reason was. And there was nothing that the doctors could do to make them heal when they couldn't heal themselves. But yes, who else has some?
I have someone I follow with some important stuff, and it was everything that you just said. So again, one of those synchronicity things,
right?
And he said, "I got to go sideways for a quick minute,
okay,
because you said about the tide lifts the boat up.
Yeah.
Well, the other side is worse. That a boat never sinks unless there's a hole in it.
Oh.
So are we letting fear in?
Right.
Or do we have the faith that as long as there's no hole in this thing, and if it's going to be, it's up to me? And so he was talking about the transformation, and he said, all this stuff's really only going to work, because it was his experience, and that's why I like him, until we admit that we know that we don't know, and that we've been around for so long, we know everything that you've said, or we've experienced it.
Right.
But with so much social media and all that, all of a sudden, everything that we knew from the inside has now been blasted with hate and fear and more fear, that we forget about the butterfly and about the season. And if it's going to be, it's up to me to plant a seed, even if I know at this point in my life I'll never see the tree. But I've certainly enjoyed the trees because somebody planted it for the right reasons so that I can see it. And I need to share with her, because it's part of our story. It's butterflies. We were both 16 years ago, and we weren't that happy, but because we knew that your life is definitely over at 60. You're never going to find the right person, because you can listen to all the other widows and widowers, and they're just miserable. You'll never find that love that you used to have. So we just went along miserable. And somebody lied and said we wanted to go out with each other. So we just said, what the heck? There's nothing. There's a concert out there. We might as well go. And we had a good time at 60 years old. That was 16 years ago. And the next day, or the next 2 or 3 days, something came across our vision that says, what the caterpillar saw as the end, the master saw the butterfly.
Exactly.
And it just changed our whole outlook. It changed our whole outlook, that here we weren't a couple of dying caterpillars in this world. We had a lot to live for, but we weren't really happy because we saw ourselves as dying caterpillars. And we've seen that butterfly transform in us. And to say what else is possible has been our mantra since we discovered that there's a couple butterflies in here. And what else is possible? And it's been the best 16 years, because we admit it. We didn't know that it was the end. We were too dumb and in love to know that this could be the end. No, it's the season. Thank you.
Well,
Butterfly.
thank you. And you have butterfly wings.
Yeah, we had a man that's like one of the most famous goldsmiths in Hollywood, and I had a cleaning business, and he retired to Florida, and I cleaned so much he knew our stories, and he knew how happy I was. He said, "I'm 90 something. I'm going to die. I'm not going to live long. Would you let me make you a ring?" And I had a wedding ring, and he took all our old gold jewelry and he made us both wedding rings that were butterflies. And he wouldn't take any money, and all the pictures of every star was in his house and saying, "Hey, thanks, Gold Dust." That was his nickname. "Thanks, Gold Dust." these people are famous, and this was put in our path too, and we shared everybody.
We had to have them cut off to have surgeries, so we don't have them on.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
There is.
That's so great.
And we had to put the fear behind us that what other people said, about him or her and this and all that. No, to go with that heart and know that it was a season, and it's a new season. Not the end.
And now you've moved here.
And here, yeah, from Florida.
We're so happy.
We're so happy. Thank you all for bringing your energy here.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want you to notice how happy the energy is in here. This is what happens when we focus on the butterfly and we just let that radiate and share it with other people when they're open to it, and don't share it all the time if they're not. But your energy still carries to other people, and we don't have to say anything. But when I had this conversation with a neighbor a little while ago, and he was moaning about how terrible things were and feeling so depressed, and I told him, well, I believe in butterflies. And he kind of perked up, and then he says, but I just don't think that things are fixable. And I said, well, I can see that you're feeling sad about the dying caterpillars. And if we can recognize that that is what it is, we are feeling, we may have been very invested in the caterpillar system. And it may be painful to see it dying. And the violence and the wars and all that stuff that are going on, it's not that we don't care, but it is part of the dying caterpillar world. And so keeping that underlying joy and having that belief that the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, or else there would be no butterflies. So one of my goals for coming and speaking here today was that if there are any of the people here in this room, they might not be here, that are just feeling so much despair and so hopeless about it, I would hope to maybe give you another perspective. And for those of you who don't already have that despair, each one of us can go out, and we could even use this analogy in a very simple way. And when they're talking about how bad things are, and you could say, well, I believe in butterflies. And then you could, and it actually changes the energy. And then if they're interested enough, you could explain what that means. And so anyway, that's a way of me hopefully spreading a little more butterfly cheer in the world. And I appreciate so much what each one of you has added to this. And I know those of you who have not said anything, you already have other ideas in your head that you didn't speak about some of the amazing things that you have experienced and that you experience regularly. So one of my invitations for you would be, as you leave here today, to just notice more of the things that maybe you have taken for granted. The broccoli that's not fancy. and just begin to kind of live in that place of wonder, because that is a very high frequency that lifts us and all the other boats. So I think I'm finished.
Yeah.